We are starting with the ATP Washington. And first of all, welcome to the show, guys. Hope you are having a great week so far. How is the betting week so far? It's only Tuesday, but I think that plenty of valuable tips also yesterday on Monday, as I saw. It's nice.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here again. Yesterday went extremely well. I went 10-2, so that's one of my best days in a while. Hit most of everything, so hopefully you can keep this up and deliver some good bets for you guys today.
What about you, James? How is going, buddy?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. Can't really compete with Snies, but I remember I saw from last week's tips. I think we tipped the winner of Hamburg, didn't we, Basil?
Yes.
That was a nice tip from the show last week. And I think we went. I didn't count the exact number, but we went something like 8 from 10 from the tips on the show.
Yes.
So that's great. I mean, I just missed out on the outright with Apelka, which was a bit annoying last week, but I thought Domino kind of deserved it, to be honest, on the week. And yeah, apart from that, we've got Evans today. We've got Nishioka today against Evans. That's in play. He's a setup, so hopefully that'll come through. But it's been a fairly quiet start to the week from my side.
Yeah, Nishioka 6-4, 3-0, and serving 2 breaks up in the second set. Easy win
I will
there.
take that.
Also, Kekmanovic just won the first set against Popirin there, 8-6 in the tiebreak. So, yeah, going good with the Washington ATP here. And I will read you a little bit the outrights. Stefanos Tsitsipas 8, Daniel Medvedev at 11, John Isner at 11, Karen Kachanov at 11, Félix Auger-Aliassime at 13, and so on. Nick Kyrgios at 17 there before even Alex de Minaur or Kyle Edmund there, Francis Tiafoe, Andrei Rublev with some amazing tennis last week. So how do you guys bet this weekend? Are we playing the outright markets, at least in this ATP Washington, which is pretty consistent? Many important players are participating to this event. James?
Yeah, so this is one of those events that's been won by a top 5 seed, I think, every year since 2011. So it's a pretty strong trend there. I think looking at it this year, I'm not as convinced by the top of the field. I think Tsitsipas, for me, is opposable here. Anderson definitely would be. Raonic definitely would be. And I think my angle would be to try and find someone in the seeds, because I think it's very likely it comes from the seeds or the top of the market, who is in a lot better form. The one that I would probably go for right now would be either Medvedev or Félix Auger-Aliassime. I personally picked Felix, primarily because of the price. I'm generally a sucker for a good price. I prefer to go for someone who's a bit longer. And Felix he was 15 when I tipped him originally. He's now 13, whereas Medvedev is more like 10. And I think either of those is a fine option. My big concern with Medvedev, I think he would probably be the person I would feel most comfortable with going in the top of the field normally. But I think ever since he made the final in Barcelona, his form's tailed off a little bit. I've not felt like he's been anywhere near as comfortable on court as he has been in the past. Whereas Felix, I sort of feel like he's had a few tough losses late in tournaments so far this year. But he seems like a player who's very, very good at bouncing back from that, keeping his head up. And also, I mean, if you look at just statistically, when they last met, which was the end of last year, Felix was basically a 2-1 underdog against Medvedev and actually ended up winning one more point in the match despite losing. And to me, that, I think it's the kind of matchup where I wouldn't want to call it on the day. I think it's very 50-50. So I'm happy taking a slightly bigger price. And he fits the bill. He's a big hitter. He's 6'3" with a pretty good serve. And generally, Washington, it's quite hot. It's fast. Tends to favor the bigger hitters, the more powerful players. So yeah, that's the angle I've taken.
That what it concerns me, exactly what you said. That is a tough draw. That is a really difficult quarter for both Felix and Medvedev there. We have Tiafoe in that. We have Opelka, who I think that will win his match and go to play Felix. After that, we have the winner of Cilic and Copil, both great servers there, who will meet Opelka or Felix. So after that, probably in the quarterfinals, it will be a match. Like you're saying, it's supposed to be a matchup between Felix and Medvedev if everything goes as planned. But it's very, very difficult because many difficult players on that quarter. I don't know what to say. But you are the pro here, so I'm following the pro.
Well, I'll
what
say
about
one
you,
thing.
Snice?
When it
What's
comes
your
to
take?
Cilic, the big problem with Cilic for me is he is not playing anywhere near the level that the prices are suggesting he is. And so for me, I'm very happy taking some play in that quarter because we've got basically Cilic and then we've got either Raonic or Kachinov. Now, those are three players who are all playing well below the level that they've shown in the past, but are all still being priced up, at least in my eyes, on kind of old form. Kachinov, I'm less sure of. I think he's always the kind of player that can have a very good tournament. But from what I've seen this year, he changed his racket and he's come back from that. He's changed his racket back now, but he's still not been consistent. So I agree with you. The prices make it hard to find a good value bet. But I would say that opposing Cilic, opposing Raonic, opposing Kachinov, they for me are the most obvious players to oppose. And I think either Medvedev or Felix would be an obvious option there.
Yeah, that's a good reasoning there. What about you, Snice?
Yeah, as James said there, this is traditionally a very chalky tournament. We have a pretty loaded field, a lot of big names that are attending here. Pretty big tournament here in Washington, usually. An ATP 500, obviously. Quick, hot, and humid event, which is really signifying the real start of the North American hardcourt swing. Big servers usually fare well here, as it is hot and humid, and the courts are quick as is, which usually helps give those serves a few extra kilometers per hour. Like James also said, last 7 years, 7 years straight, a top 5 seed has won the tournament. But I think a lot of seeds have question marks this year. Tsitsipas has struggled at times with some hangovers from good tournaments. He doesn't like hot, humid conditions. Anderson and Isner both lack matches. Raonic and Cilic have been abysmal at times. And so a name that caught my eye is David Goffin. Even though he dislikes hot and humid conditions, I like him here. He has one of the purest ball strikes on the tour, and right now he's full of confidence. And when he is, he's definitely a dangerous player. He made the Halle final in Germany on grass, and he should have won the first set versus Novak Djokovic in the quarterfinal of Wimbledon, but he actually choked that away and then fell away. So he's playing really well right now. And he has a pretty manageable quarter, so he's one to look out for there. The other name I like is also from the top half, and it's Hubert Hurkacz, the Polish player. An interesting stat line I came across here is to look at the hard court tennis percentage of points won. So over the last 12 months, the top 3 on that list are Novak Djokovic, it's Juan Martín del Potro. Number 3 is Hubert Hurkacz. He's won 54.3% of all of his points over the last 12 months on hardcourt, which really proves that this surface should suit his game incredibly well. So I think the kid can definitely perform here. He possesses a solid all-court game, and he will be a threat here. And I got him at 41 times the money just before the market closed here about an hour ago. Should reopen again. And also, just to mention, I got Goffin at 21.
Yeah, Goffin with a nice quarter there. The winner between Evans and Nishioka, which obviously is Nishioka, is 4-1, and he's serving for 5-1 in the second set there. Should beat
Don't jinx me here,
Nishioka there. Sorry?
Don't jinx me here. He's 4-1. He can still lose. You know what it's like.
No, it's 6-4-4-1. Don't worry about it. I'm not the kind of person that is jinxing stuff. No, I have others on Twitter that are doing that. And I started to block them, But talking about stats a little bit before going into some of your favorite plays from this tournament here. How important are stats in tennis? I know how important are stats in football, and I know how much I'm using them. From my betting perspective in football, I use around 15% of my betting is based on stats. The other 85% is coming from totally different, knowing the teams, knowing the players, knowing even knowing the weather, knowing how important the matches are, the strategies, the system of plays, and everything. But in tennis, how is important is that are the stats in tennis? Because I hear you guys talking week in and week out. I read Joao's articles, and many times he's talking about stats. So give me a percentage how much from your betting you're using stats, James.
Okay, so difficult as a percentage. I would probably say something more like, 20, 25%. But really, it comes down to, for me, stats are a way of checking myself. I think, and it also depends on how complex the bet is, right? So I remember William Hill, they used to offer tiebreak markets on the Isner matches. They used to offer 3-1. Anybody with a tiny bit of stats can tell you that's a ridiculous price. So I think with a really simple bet where the bookies have clearly messed up, stats can be all you need. I think once you get into more complex situations, if you're trying to price matches, if you're trying to price stuff like total sets, these kind of things, a lot of intuition comes in for me, a lot of instinct. And as you say, things that kind of could be statistical, like the context, the weather, but ultimately they're not really statistical for us. We tend to just look at it and make a judgment. So for me, yeah, probably about 20, 25%.
What about you, Snice?
I'd have to agree with James there. I'd say it's a bit lower, maybe 20%. Usually I use a couple of statistical packages just to check myself to see if the numbers are supported by the stats or if I'm going against what the math says. Most of my capping is done on just watching a tennis for over a decade, knowing the players, knowing their preferences, their games, their moods, and knowing the tournaments on tour and all of these factors. And then I just combine all of it together to find my angle. Sometimes I do bets that are purely based on stats. For example, when I think that a match is probably 50-50 and we get something like a 3.5 price, then I just, on pure statistical matter, I'll just jump on that because I think it's very likely that we get a winner more than the odds would suggest. But it's a mix, but I'd say somewhere around there, 20%.
And I think the key point you make there, which I agree with, is that a lot of it comes down to checking yourself. You're trying to make sure. So, like, for me, a big thing is I don't want to oppose a really strong trend. If you have someone who is just playing really dominantly this year, you might look at that and have a strong instinct, or at least a bit of an instinct, to bet against them, and then sort of check yourself and say, well, 1 minute, are there several obvious statistical reasons why I need to be a bit cautious going against this player? Anyway, sorry, Alex, go on.
No. It's okay. I love when you guys are giving great info. I know that I talked with you a few weeks ago, James, and you said that you are a number better. You are more a number guy. I don't know. Explain to us a little bit.
Yeah. So I suppose it depends what you mean. So my degree and my uni stuff was all English based. So I suppose what I was saying at the time was, that's probably not where my heart lies. I'm much more of a stats-based guy in the sense that I like to think in a probabilistic way. But it gets a little bit confusing here because that for me doesn't really mean the same as using stats. Stats are just one way to build up your intuition, your understanding of the situation. But the way I look at the situations, what I'm thinking when I watch a match is, if this match was played over 100 times, how many times would X person win it? Right, so I'm thinking probabilistically about how that will play out. One of the other obvious things that I can do is you can build models, or you can have filters which essentially allow you to, as I said before, avoid putting your foot in it in an obvious situation where you need to be a bit more cautious.
We have many of our friends into the chat. Andrew, an old friend of ours, an old SBR contributor, great with NHL. Thank you for joining us. He says Thompson will destroy Jack Sock. Snice is communicating with him on chat there. But yeah, let's come to some plays here. Many matches going on right now. 2 matches actually going on right now. Later on, we have Opelka Eubanks, Jack Sock Thompson, Edmund Harris, and Tiafoe versus Bublik. But we also have tomorrow some matches. So, guys, give me some of your favorite picks for our viewers here from this great tournament in Washington. It's nice.
Yeah, so we have one bet here. I was also on, but obviously the game had already started. But previously to this, I was on Popyrin and Nishioka both to win there. Looking like Popyrin is going to lose and Nishioka is going to win. Another match that kicks off pretty soon is Opelka versus Christoph Eubanks. And I've gone for Opelka to win 2-0 in this one. Opelka is soaring through the rankings right now. He's recently completed the hat-trick over wins over Isner. Looking to be the new big tree, but there's more to his game than just the serve. He moves decently well for a man of his stature. He's pretty decent at the net, has a really good forehand and backhand. Eubanks, on the other hand, he also has a big serve, but he's much more limited in his game beyond that serve. He has only 4 ATP Tour wins in his career, and I expect Opelka to oust him relatively comfortably here. Probably 2 straight tie breaks. But I think he wins in straight sets. Moving on here, I have a match tomorrow that I've looked at, which is John Isner versus Hubert Hurkacz. Like I said earlier about Hurkacz, I think his game is really well suited to the hard court. I think that he can make a big splash in this tournament. Isner still lacks matches after coming back from a foot injury that's had him sidelined for a few months. Isner, as we know, pretty much cannot return serve. He lives mostly on his thunderous 240 km/h serve and goes through via tie breaks. Hurkacz also has a very big serve. Is fantastic at the net from his experience at playing doubles. So I think that both of these players will have severe difficulty breaking each other. And as with most Isner matches, tie breaks are a natural conclusion. So I've gone with over 25.5 games at 1.79 here. I'd be shocked if we don't see at least 2 tie breaks. We likely see 3 sets as well, but definitely very comfortable with the over there.
Told you, James, that I will not jinx your bet there. Nishioka is the win 6-1 in the second set. Going through the next round, where he will meet. Let me check. He will meet David Goffin. A tough challenge for Nishioka there. Snice already said that he will oppose Nishioka by playing Goffin outright market to win the competition, to win the tournament. What's your favorite plays, James, for this tournament?
Okay, so it's interesting you're talking about the Sock Johnson match. I was deliberating over that match earlier, because my problem with that is I think Sock is actually, I would tend to think of him as quite a good player to bet on when he's playing well. Of course, he's not been playing well. When he played Kekmanovic last week, I actually thought he was fine. I thought he played fairly well. He kind of was a bit unlucky to lose in straight sets, 2 tie breaks. So I was kind of considering Sock. Now, the problem for me is I don't have any marker for how well that form is going to follow through. I don't tend to bet on players who've been out for so long with injuries and have been so on and off. So I would probably leave that match. But yeah, it's interesting. Someone was saying Thompson would destroy him. I definitely wouldn't expect that personally. I would definitely expect, as long as Sock plays fine, as long as he plays relatively the same as last week, I would expect it to be somewhat competitive. The Opelka match that Snice just talked about, I think. So for me, I think the 2-love was a nice bet when Eubanks was at his initial price. He's now drifted out to about 3.85. The only issue for me with that is, I think, yeah, when you posted the bet initially on Twitter, I remember that, that's a good time to get on it. I think now it's slightly more difficult. The odds will have come down quite a bit. But beyond that, I think that match is probably roughly accurately priced. The one that I was probably most interested in was Tiafoe Bublik, primarily because I can't really see either of them getting through that in straight sets under normal conditions. I suppose Tiafoe, obviously, if he plays his best, he can, but he's got a prolific record of making matches harder for himself than he should. And it's a bit of a trick. You can take advantage of the fact that Bet365 tend to offer slightly longer prices on 3 sets than any other bookie does. It's a bit of a weird thing. I don't know why they do it, but you can get 2.5 on 3 sets in that match. And for me, I would not expect either of them to win that in straight sets. I think that's the kind of match that I would expect to go long. One of them will play well, then the other one will play well, or one of them will play dreadfully and the other one will play dreadfully, something like that. It's what tends to happen with them. So I quite like that bet, 2.5 on 3 sets. The second one for me would be to go back to the match you were talking about, Hurkacz. Another angle, another way to play that with the over is just to back the first set tiebreak. That's 2.37. I completely agree with what Snides was saying. I think this is a matchup that will be dominated by a few points. It's going to be serve-orientated as long as both of them turn up in any form. It doesn't look like it should be too windy. The humidity is not always ideal, but it's so hot. And one of the stats, I was talking about stats, one of the stats, Washington, I think, has had 44% of matches having a tiebreak, which is, I think, equivalent to or second only to Shenzhen of the outdoor hard events. So it's a very good event to back tiebreaks in. So for me, 2.37 on the first set tiebreak between Hurkacz and Isner, I would very much expect that bet to come in maybe 55% of the time, something like that. So for me, yeah, 2.37 probably should be odds on. So I quite like that one as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. 8 from 10 last week. So pen and paper, guys, because these two are giving us some great winners. And not only they are giving great winners, but the intel that they are putting in these bets is unbelievable. I can listen to them 24 hours talking about tennis because I really enjoyed someone so knowledgeable. So that's it from Washington. We're going few kilometers away. If you put your finger on the map, in Mexico at Los Cabos, and we have many outrights tips odds for that tournament. I don't understand why we don't have the same for Washington, but it seems that the bookies are preferring Los Cabos than Washington in terms of outrights. We have the winner market, we have the quarters, we have the winning half, and so on. So about the winner a little bit, Luca Pui at 8, Taylor Fritz at 8, Diego Schwartzman at 9, Fabio Fonini at 10. If we are looking for big numbers here, what are the big numbers? What are the underdogs, let's say? Because we also have Grigor Dimitrov after that, Steve Johnson, and so on. So what are you guys looking at in terms of winner, or if you have something else from the quarters or the winning halves, Snides?
Just a quick note there. The reason why we don't have odds on Washington right now is because the tournament is in play, whereas Los Cabos starts late in the evening to circumvent the extreme heat that they have there right now. So the Washington markets will open up again after this round has concluded, and this Mexico starts in about 6 hours, so we still have some time there. So this tournament is quite new on tour. We don't have as much data from it. I think this is the 4th year it's been on tour here. It's not as high prolific event as at Washington, so most of the bigger names are in Washington instead. A bit surprising that we see Taylor Fritz here instead of in Washington. I would have expected him to be there. So Fabio Fognini was last year's champion. This is a quick hard court tournament, certainly not one you would expect him to win. But he won. But I'm definitely looking to oppose him here. Fabio Fognini isn't really the most consistent player on tour, so to speak. But yeah, with most of the stronger names playing in Washington, the one that found my appeal is Diego Schwartzman. The Argentinian is an elite mover. He packs a big punch despite his humble height of 170 centimeters. We saw him play extremely well on grass, which he hadn't done before. He'd only won 2 matches on grass in his career. Made some waves there over the grass swing, and I think he comes to this hard court swing in good form. He has great hard court numbers, and his draw looks quite soft, if I do say so myself. Doesn't really have a difficult path to get to the final. The only real dangerous seed he has in his half, I would say, is Guy de Pella, the number 2 seed. So definitely looking very likely to go to the final, and I like him to win there. And I got him at 9 last night.
At 9, and now, how? What's his price?
I think he's at 8 now.
You can get him
Yeah, he's
9
at
with
8 now.
bookies now.
Yeah, at 8 right now, the best price on the market. You can find him at 6.5, depending on the bookies you have. James?
Okay, so it's interesting you mentioned Payer. That was actually my thought for this one. So I considered Schwartzman. I'm still very mixed about this decision. So probably people should just back both and find out. But my main issue with that quarter was I thought it might be a little bit quick for Schwartzman. I know he plays well in quick conditions sometimes. To me, it just seems to depend on the height of the ball bounce. I feel like he does well on grass and indoor hard because he quite likes the lower bounce. It kind of suits his style. Washington's not exactly high bouncing, I don't think, but I found it a little bit difficult for me to judge that. So I went with Payer. Now, the problem with Payer is his hard court record is not quite as great as Schwartzman. When I went back over it and looked at why, I'm not convinced that he's just not played that many matches on it. So I'm not really convinced how relevant that is. I don't know. I can't imagine why these conditions wouldn't suit him. He had a phenomenal run in Wimbledon, where he beat Raonic and Anderson. And of course, that was anyone who watched Wimbledon this year. It played more like a hard court. It bounced quite high. It was obviously quick because it's grass. And I thought he dealt with those conditions absolutely fine. Of the players, the main thing for me was the price. He's longer than Dimitrov and Johnson. Of course, that would make sense, kind of like intuitively. But if you look at how they're actually playing, I mean, Dimitrov has been absolutely dire. He had an awful loss to Kevin King last week.
Exactly.
He may well find some form, but generally, Dimitrov is quite a directional player. When he's playing badly, it's usually a good idea to assume he's going to keep playing badly until he bumps the trend. And Johnson, I just am, if we get Johnson, that's good news anyway, because it means he's beaten Dimitrov. So for me in that half, I think I was deliberating between Schwartzman or Payer, perhaps just go for both. Probably the big worry would be that he has a post-Wimbledon come down. But if he plays anything like the level he played at for Wimbledon, I think he's got every chance. The rest of the people in his quarter, which would be Garin, Londero, Steber, or Sunwoo Kwon, that bunch of players have absolutely no hard court heritage, really. Garin's probably the one I'd be most worried about. But all of them, I think, look like they're kind of coming down after a good clay season. Steber will hopefully be knackered after having made the final last week in Stad. And then, obviously after that, you'd assume that he'd be playing Schwartzman. And for me, I just feel like perhaps the quicker conditions will favour Payer, but Schwartzman will be the favourite in that matchup. So it kind of depends how you want to play it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's always nice to go with some 2-3, let's say, outright bets priced at 10 and up, because you can always cash out if the players are going through to the next rounds and they have deep tournaments. Interesting matches today, tonight in Europe, today in Mexico. Taro Daniels versus Sangren. Garin, one of Snaiz's favorite, playing Londero there. Tipsarevic versus Radu Albot from Moldova. Dimitrov Johnson, finally, I think that is, let's say, the clash of the day in Mexico. Do you guys love these matchups? Do you like any of them? You have any tips for them, Snaiz?
So starting off our bets here, coming in at, I think it's going to be 2 a.m. CEST, where I'm located. We have a matchup between Christian Garin and Juan Ignacio Londero. Both have been breakthrough names on the tour this year, getting maiden titles to their names and established themselves quite well. Both obviously more suited to the clay, don't really have that much experience on hard court. They've actually faced a ton of times already, although not on the ATP level. They've faced 7 times on the Challenger Tour, and Garin holds a 5-2 head-to-head lead there. Both players really seek the first strike, but I feel that Garin is the better player overall here. I think he's a bit more solid. Londero can go errant at times when he's not on his game. And I think that Garin's game is a bit more suited to the hard courts than the game of Londero is. So I went with him to win -2.5 games at evens. Moving on, we have...
Or you can add him in a knockabet at 1.57 right now on the money line with Betfair.
Also works. Should win that match. Moving on, we have the match of the night, as Alex dubbed it. Steve Johnson versus Grigor Dimitrov. And the question I have is, what happened to Grigor Dimitrov? The once coveted world number three once upon a time. The man is an absolute disaster right now.
You want me to tell you what happened? I will tell you what happened. Sharapova broke up with him, and he was destroyed for life. This is what happened.
Sharapova is the root of all evil.
When you don't get the Renault sign, how we say here in my country, when you don't have the proper one, you go broke. This is what happened to Dimitrov. Sharapova, who is now doing more social media than playing tennis. I heard that she received a wild card to next week. I think that I don't know. I was reading today on Twitter that Sharapova and Venus Williams received the 2 wild cards next week in one of the tournaments. I think that in US for sure, because they are trying to prepare for the US Open, and Sharapova wants to win it like she does. She wants every time to win it, But yeah, this is what happened to Dimitrov, and go with Johnson in this one, please. At 2.08, he's the huge underdog.
All right. So anyways, Sharapova and Venus, they got a wild card for Cincinnati just to end that. And segueing right back into the match here, Sharapova broke up with Dimitrov. He went off the rails. He's now a disaster. But yeah, he struggled with shoulder injury this year. But the Bulgarian's performances, apart from that, has been nothing short of woeful. He lost to 348th ranked Kevin King in straight sets in Atlanta, as James mentioned. Complete abomination. I don't think make this easy on yourself. He shouldn't be favored against any decent player right now. And the price was an insult at the Open. I got him Johnson last night at 2.35. Has obviously come down a bit, but I would still favor Johnson in this match. So bet on Johnson.
Yeah.
Moving on here, we have
absolutely. 2.08 to 2.1 with Bet365, 2.1 with Betfair right now. Still great value on Johnson. I think that Dimitrov is a disgrace this year. I think that, to be honest, he should be out in the first round in every single tournament till the end of the season. I don't think that his quality is so high. Yes, I think that in the past he was one of the great ones. I loved watching him, but lately it's like watching I don't know, Brighton against Manchester City when Dimitrov is playing one good player in the tour.
Yeah, that's about right.
It's nice. Go on, please. Go with the.
Yeah. We have a couple of more matches. I have 2 more matches to have a look at. These go tomorrow. And it's going to be outright hope Diego Schwartzman entering his match with Ernests Gulbis. And Gulbis is another player who is a shadow of himself. Was a really great player back in the day, a couple of years ago. But he's now lost 18 of his last 19 matches before coming through Jason Young in qualifying here. Though he has a big serve, Schwartzman is a great returner, and he will completely dominate as soon as the ball is in play. I can't really look past another stumble from Gulbis here. In most of his losses, he hasn't even taken a set. Schwartzman is a much better player, and as long as he can neutralize that serve, he should be winning this in straight sets. So I bet him 2-0 at 1.72. And as for my last bet here, it is Luca Pouille versus Thanasi Kokkinakis. And the Aussie, Kokinakis, he struggled with shoulder injuries for ages now, and he's been on and off the tour several times this season alone. He's only played 12 matches in total. Lucas Pouille, on the other hand, is an established pro who's been playing well this year, most notably made the semifinals of the Australian Open on outdoor hard courts. Played pretty well on the grass too, and I like the Frenchman to see off the challenge of Kokinakis, who hasn't really played a lot of matches this season. And I got that money line at 1.77.
Yeah, Thanasis Kokinakis, Nick Kyrgios, two great Australian names. Not. They are coming both from Greek families there, so this is what happens when you are young, you're living your life in another country, and suddenly Thanasis Kokinakis, who the Greek people love because they think that he's one of theirs. He's playing for Australia because he was born and raised there. But this is another discussion. Also, Ernest Gulbis, I'm telling you what's happening with him. Like always, he's coming from a very rich family, and he never had problems with money in his life. His father is one of the Latvian, or I think that he's coming from Latvia, right? Most rich people. And I think that he's playing tennis just to do something in his life because anyway, he will never have problems with the money. And he's very, very let me to let you, something like that. He doesn't fight. He struggles every time. He has mental issues. Yeah, it's like little kids coming from rich families who will never work in their lives. Anyway, that's totally another discussion also there. James, do you have any place for this tournament?
Yeah, so I think a couple of the matches that Snies looked at. So I think Dimitrov Johnson, for me, there's two bets on that match that can make sense. The first one is the obvious one in the sense that, like, as you say, Dimitrov's been dreadful. So I think just betting against him makes sense. I think also Los Cabos, we should point out, same as Washington, 44% of matches having tie breaks. So that's joint second most of the outdoor hard events. The weather in Los Cabos should be very hot as well. So again, this is a quick hard court event. So looking for over bets or tie breaks can also make sense. Dimitrov lost in straight sets to Kevin King, 7-5, 6-4, I believe it was, last week. Now, if he plays at that level this week, he's not going to cover an over line. But I would definitely say that on balance, the over bet is also a possibility there because I can just imagine him not being great, but being a little bit up and down, perhaps doing enough to win a set or even to just get it to a tie break. But yeah, I agree with Snies here. I think the win is by far the most obvious bet there. And then also in the Gulbis-Schwartzman match, similar idea. I think Schwartzman, one of the best bets for Schwartzman over his entire career has been to back the first and or the second set to go under 8.5 games. And generally you can get a price of 3 or more. Often, as now, you can get 3.5, and the bettors come in about 40% of the time over a big sample size when he's a favorite. So if you look at this kind of situation, it's a prime situation for an underbet. Yeah, I can see we're getting the confirmation from Snies there. He likes it. And I think hopefully, the other thing you could go for is a 6 love, of course. That always works as well if we're going to go the whole way. But yeah, I like that at 3.5, both the first and second sets to go under 8.5 games. I think is a good shout. And then I think, so then the final one for me was to probably have a go at opposing Steber after his long week last week. Made the final in Start after having been riddled with injuries. He lost fairly comfortably in the end to Albert Ramos. He played very well all week. My guess would be that he'll have a bit of a come-down week this week. Maybe he won't. But if he does, Kwon is quite a good player for dominating. He will often crush opponents when they're not their best because of his style of play. And you can get 34 on 6 love in the first or second set. I think probably either both or the first set would make sense to me. I quite like that as a bet, 6 love at 34. Because even then, if he retires after losing the first set 6 love, you still get your bet. So.
Wow. We're talking
heavy
bets here.
Just to add in there to James what he said. Stebe is also coming from cross-continent, played in Austria at high altitude, now switching to hard courts on a different continent. So that's always going to be. He's not rested as well. It's only been 2 days since the final. So very, very tricky travel spot there.